This is the latest flagship from Realme, and they have certainly stepped up their game here. Their most premium phone to date. It has two 50 megapixel cameras on the back. So the same 50 megapixel main camera as the GT2, which is a Sony IMX766. But then it has a 150 degree ultra wide, which is a Samsung 50 megapixel camera, and then a 3 megapixel microscopic camera for getting in really close, super detailed photos. So it is powered by the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, this model, compared to the Snapdragon 888 that's in the GT2, and it does have a better screen. This one is 6.7 inches. It's a Samsung AMOLED E4 120Hz flat panel. It does house a 32 megapixel front-facing selfie camera, and the battery capacity, 5,000 milliamp hours, all charged by that 65 watt fast charger, which takes around only 30 minutes to fully charge the GT2 Pro. Along with our phone in the box, you'll find a SIM tray tool, quick start guide, and some paperwork. The Super Dart charger. Now this is a 65 watt charger, and I'll give you the exact charging times along with battery life in this review. The cable that we get is Type C to Type A, good length to it, and slightly thicker than most cables because the amount of current that's going through it with that 65 watt charger. And a TPU case here, which is a thin case. Doesn't offer really a lot of protection, but I do like the fact that it's thin, so it's not adding any more bulk to the GT2 Pro. Now, this phone has a striking build and finish to it, especially coming from Realme. This is, without a doubt, their most premium phone yet. So we have this biopolymer finish on the rear of it, paper-like texture to it and finish. It's matte, so it doesn't pick up any fingerprints or smudges, and it doesn't have, of course, the durability of paper. It's much more durable. Realme claims that it's going to transmit and let that heat through a lot better than other finishes and materials used, and it also does have less of a carbon footprint involved in actually manufacturing this too, which is, of course, great for the environment there. So two 50 megapixel cameras here. One's our ultra-wide, 150 degree field of view, which is very interesting, so quite a wide lens on that. As you can see, I bring it up there to the camera. It doesn't look bad, I think, this camera module, the way they've set that out. And then the top one, that is the 50 megapixel main camera. It's an IMX766 with optical image stabilization. We also do have electronic image stabilization for video with these cameras. And this one right here, again, interesting because it is a microscopic camera. So it's got a 20 times zoom. You can get very close, detailed photos, and I'll give you a sample of those later on when it comes to the camera portion of this review. So the thickness of it, it's only 8.2 millimeters. It weighs about 190 grams, so it feels very good. And this metal frame is great. The rounded edges to it, and then the curvature to the end of this. However, this screen, that is flat. Now the fingerprint reader, I do like the position of it. I think they've got it in a really good position that it's easy to get to, as you can see. It's not too low like some manufacturers often do. And this screen is a LTPO 2.0 AMOLED. It's an E4 screen from Samsung. It has 1 billion colors and 12-bit color depth to it, 120 Hz HDR10+, 1400 nits peak that it can output. It's a very good screen, but the best thing for me is just how flat this 6.7 inch screen is. It's just perfectly flat. Now the camera here is a 32 megapixel one, and I'll give you samples too again of that later on. And the cutout of it isn't too bad, and we do have these very slim bezels on the sides, top and bottom, which do look great. Along the bottom, antenna line, microphone, loudspeaker, and our SIM tray. So the SIM tray takes 2 nano SIMs. It does have a gasket around it, and there is no micro SD card support with this phone, and I didn't really expect it. You can't expect it now with any flagships, unfortunately. Only the more affordable phones and mid-ranges tend to have the micro SD card support. Up the top, another 2 antenna lines, secondary mic for noise cancellation in calls, and also it is used in video, of course, to record in stereo with the 2 microphones. So the screen on this phone is an absolute stunner. It's LTPO2 and it's a Samsung E4 display, HDR10+, 120 Hz, Maximum brightness can go well over 1200 nits. In fact, 1400 is their claim in the high brightness mode. Now, if you go in here, you can see screen resolution. You can adjust this. You can have it to be auto select, or you can force it onto the QHD+. So yes, it's a 1440p plus display, this one. And you do get some other options too from Realme, which is all this here, which is their Ultra Vision engine. I tend not to use this. Image sharpener, color enhancer, and motion enhancement. I found that with the color enhancement, it tends to be a little bit oversaturated. And the sharpener, well, I don't see too much of a difference. So it's off by default, and I just leave it off there. Now you've got, of course, eye comfort mode, you've got dark mode on there, and you can adjust all the colors too. You can go in here, you've got Pro mode. Pro mode lets you select what you want. Well, for example, if you want the cinematic P3, brilliant. And you can go and adjust the white balance. That's there too. And then there is this option, which is the nature tone display. Automatically adjusts screen color temperature according to the ambient lighting, which tends to work okay. And I don't know if a lot of people would probably use that, but it's good to see those options are there. Now, I'll just go quickly into Display Tester, jump into a few of the little tests here, just to run through the screen very briefly here, that it is a stunning display. It really is. I think it's one of my favorites, and I just love the fact that it's flat and, of course, super bright, great colors, AMOLED with those deep blacks too as well. It just looks amazing, and the slim bezels on it. It really is a top tier panel that Realme have selected for this model. Now, the fingerprint scanner for me has been very good. No problems at all with it. It's 100%, no failed scans, and I've just added my thumb only once, so it's faring very well. The UI performance, very quick. Everything running at 120 Hz. That's what I have it set to. And we are running here Realme UI 3.0. Now, you can, if you want to, dedicate a little bit more here to virtual memory. Now, this is not actually expanding upon the RAM, which a couple of people in comments have said, hey, I can expand my RAM. It's not actual physical RAM expansion. Of course not. That's impossible. It's just virtual, but you get 3 dedicated to it. It's supposed to help smooth things out, speed it up a little bit. So if your RAM does become a little bit full, it will end up using that. It's basically like a swap file on your PC. So we do have, of course, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, and my model here has 12 gigabytes of RAM, and it's exceptionally quick with everything. Multitasking is great. Now, I have noticed that occasionally if you go into an app that's been sitting there in the background for a while, like Windy, it will probably end up reloading. In fact, it didn't, and that's good. That's probably been there now for at least 30 minutes, and I really thought it would reload it, but it doesn't. But everything is very, very quick. As you can see, all the animations are good. I have not seen any animation lag or problems. Gestures are working fine, and it seems to be bug-free. There were a couple of bug fixes that came through on the latest firmware update that I did get. Now, I won't go into a huge amount of details or anything like that, what we can do with the UI, because most people would already really know all of that. But what you do need to know is that it's very quick and it's stable, and I have no complaints really with it. I think Realme UI is now definitely better than MIUI, especially MIUI 13. Bloatware. Thankfully, the GT2 Pro does not have a lot of bloatware on it. You can count 4, maybe 5 applications pre-installed that you may have to uninstall. And this is nothing compared to other brands like Xiaomi that can put 15, 16, and even 18 additional, what I would classify as bloatware apps on there that you have to go and remove. But Realme, very good with that. They're not really putting a lot of bloatware on there at all. So charge time for the 65-watt charger does an excellent job to go from 10% to 100 in just 29 minutes is what I've measured here. Most of the time I charge, it will take, yes, around half an hour, which is great considering it's a 65-watt charger. Other brands use 120 and they take 20 minutes to charge, so it's not doing bad at all for 65 watts. Internal storage, so I do have here with my review unit 256 gigabytes of storage, and the random reads and writes here you can see are excellent. Look at that, over 300 megabytes per second. Sequential reads and writes are excellent, so there's no way this storage is going to bottleneck the phone at all. And not even the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, you can see an excellent score just below 1 million points with Antutu. Shows that it's very powerful. You will see temperatures go up, though. Just from that one run, it went up almost 10 degrees. The battery did lose 6% there too. And the stress test with Wildlife Extreme here, that runs for 20 minutes. Does show what I've seen on other Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 phones, that they get quite warm and it does throttle. So you can see performance did throttle down, especially around the 7-8 minute mark there. It really did drop off a bit. And you'll see that later on too with Genshin Impact, which I will test out. So temperatures went from just starting out as a cold phone, 23 degrees, up to 44 degrees Celsius. And again, a little bit of throttling was taking place. Well, quite a bit actually too. But I'll get onto that later on too when we test out that game, which is really demanding. So safety net pass here, which is good. So it does have NFC. You can run your banking apps and everything's all secure there. Now we do have a Widevine level 1 cert, which means Netflix, Full HD, but Amazon Prime Video is just standard definition until Amazon whitelists this device and hundreds of others, which they seem to be very slow to do. So Camera 2 API, this means that you can use Open Camera and Gcam ports. If you wanted to test them out on the GT2 Pro, you can do so, which is good. GPS works well. Accuracy is 3 meters, the max. Average signal strength was not too bad at all, and really no complaints. It's got a lock very, very quick. Battery life, finally. Excellent. Very good. This is a fixed battery life test, so the displays are calibrated to 200 nits. I just let it run. That's the result I got there, 12 hours and 38 minutes, which is great compared to other 120 hertz phones. So realistically, real-world use, which is light use that I'd say mostly social media like Twitter, WhatsApp, calls, things like that, internet, you're looking around approximately 9 hours of screen on time. For a 120 hertz phone, that's not actually too bad at all. So most people should make it through a full day with that 5,000 milliamp hour battery. Audio performance now, so not forgetting voice calls. After all, it is a phone and they sound good. They do have active noise cancellation and I haven't had any complaints from the other end and they also sounded great. So the phone calls, no issues, no problems at all with the quality. Now we don't have a 3.5mm headphone jack on this, so no analog audio, but you can use an adapter, so Type-C to 3.5. And what does it sound like? It sounds good to my ears, no complaints there. And we do have the dual loudspeakers on this, so the earpiece and then the speaker down below where we get that sound. And the volume is great. There's a little bit of bass to it, and overall they're good speakers here that we have with the GT2 Pro. And I'll give you a sample of them now at 100% volume. Gaming performance now. This is a title that most people know, PUBG. Now, what frame rate option do we get? So if you use Smooth Balance HD HDR, we get Extreme. That's all it's going to give us. So we don't get a 90 frames per second option with this yet, which is really odd because the phone can handle that without an issue. It's just the developers that need to add support for the GT2 Pro that we can run it at 90 frames per second. So I'll quickly jump into the gameplay of this one and show you just a few seconds of what it's like, and then I'll go on to Genshin Impact. As you can see, it's normally a solid 59 frames per second, so it is basically 60 frames per second the whole time. The Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 has no problems with a game like this, PUBG, even on the HD or high settings, not an issue there. Now, if you swipe from the top left, you can bring up this, which is the game bar here, and I do have what is the system resources thing that's up right now, okay? So you can see the load there on it, the frame rate. I'll move over into Genshin Impact now, which should actually push this phone a lot more than PUBG, which is only loading up the GPU, you can see, to about 50%, and the CPU is always under 10, so it's a light title, PUBG. We're looking around mid-40s to 50 frames per second, 44. Now that is typical. It's what I'm seeing on a lot of other phones. There is only one other phone that I have seen that can run this game at 60 frames per second solid. And that is the Red Magic 7. Same chipset, but it is fan cooled. There's a little tiny fan in it blowing all the hot air out. Now I can feel the phone is heating up already. So what I will do is I'll play Genshin Impact here now for an hour, and we'll see just how warm is the Realme GT2 Pro going to get with such a demanding game like this one. Alright, so I have certainly felt the phone getting quite warm, and it's up to now about 41, 42 degrees. This is the front of it, and we'll take a look now at the back. So just around next to where the camera module is, you can see it's getting warm, but not quite as warm there, around about 38 degrees Celsius as the maximum on the back of it. So yes, it does get warm, but this is nothing like the 45, close to 50 degrees I have seen on the Xiaomi 12 Pro. So it is cooler, even though it has the same chipset as that model. And over to our video quality now first here with the camera. So this is the front-facing 32 megapixel camera. And the weather at the moment is terrible. It's been bad since I've been back from Mobile World Congress, and I really need to get this video out. And the forecast is the rest of the week just bad anyway. So hey, it's what it is, which is not normally like this anyway for this region. So 32 megapixels. It does have electronic image stabilization. And you see as I walk ahead, it smooths it out. By default, the electronic image stabilization is actually off, which is a little unusual. Now, the audio bitrate is one area of complaint here from me. That's only 96 kilobits per second. They really do need to fix this. And I keep seeing this over and over again on all sorts of brands, well, mostly Realme and Xiaomi. And it does need to be corrected because the audio quality, I don't think, sounds really that good. So it's just 1080p. You can't shoot 4K with the front-facing cameras. But let's have a look at the rear cameras now, the video performance. This is the main sensor, so 4K 60, 4K 30, and even 8K 24 frames per second. Optical and electronic image stabilization. Starting to rain quite a bit heavier now at the moment. So panning around, I don't normally see any judder, and I do apologize again for this terrible weather. Now if you zoom back, you can go over then to the ultra-wide camera. This one's a Samsung 50 megapixels with electronic image stabilization. Overall, the quality I do find to be good. It's just really that audio bitrate that I'm not very fond of. Now I can see that even though the weather's been bad here, it can take an excellent photo, reasonably good low light too performance, but a little bit of optimization I feel is needed with the cameras, especially when it comes to video. They need to improve that audio quality. I don't think it's up to flagship grade. So the performance of the UI, Realme UI 3.0, I think is fantastic. It's very quick. The animations are really good, and it certainly is a lot better than MIUI 13, which also runs Android 12 like this. It just seems more optimized, better performance overall, and just faster, snappier, quick. Everything you do is great. It's super quick. Now, the fingerprint reader, when you unlock it, it's instant, almost. And I've had no issues with it. It's accurate, and I've found it to be one of the best so far out of the flagships I've been reviewing. Now, I do like this new design that they've come out with Realme and the new biopolymer material on the back. It's matte finish to it, means no fingerprints, it doesn't look all smudgy and horrible, and it's looking great. Whereas other phones might have a metal back on them or glass back, you have to keep wiping them down and cleaning them, but you don't have to do that at all with this. And I can see it's helping out a little bit with the thermals. Now, yes, it does get warm. When you play a game like, as I did, Genshin Impact for 1 hour, the frame around the outside gets warm to the touch. It gets a little hot around here, and then the screen is the area that gets the hottest, up to about 45 degrees Celsius, is in fact what I've seen. But that is better than the other Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 phones that are currently covered here in the channel. For example, the Xiaomi 12, Xiaomi 12 Pro, and then the OnePlus 10 Pro all reached around 50 degrees or 48 degrees Celsius, quite a bit warmer to the touch than this, with the same kind of stress test, gaming Genshin Impact for 1 hour. It certainly burns through the battery too as well. Now at 120 Hz, the battery life on this is quite good. It's not too bad. It should go for most people around 9 hours of just social media. General kind of use, but not gaming, okay? Not gaming, of course. That burns through the battery a lot quicker, especially at the 120 Hz. So the battery can charge in just 30 minutes. It's quick to charge considering competition out there have 120-watt chargers that take 20 minutes or 21 minutes in my testing. This is only 8 minutes more and it's fully charged with a larger battery being 5,000 milliamp hours. So even at 65 watts, it's still definitely right up there when it comes to the charging speeds. So the build quality, the finish, the UI, it's a very well-rounded phone here from Realme, and so far, definitely one of my favorite flagships for 2022. Thank you so much for watching my review here of the Realme GT2 Pro.